On this week's panel, we've got Robert LaRocca from the REIV, Tim Fletcher from Fletcher's.
Hi, Karina.
And Melissa Opie from Keyhole Property Investments.
Nice to see you again.
On this special panel, we're talking about presentation and how to make the most of your property for when it comes time to sell. Tim?
Everyone wants the most money for their property when they're selling. That's natural. And the way to achieve that is to present it better than your competitor and create a wow factor. And that wow factor really must happen when you pull up out the front in your car, or you walk past the place and you're looking at the board, or you're looking at the internet. You've got to get people in a position where they say, wow, I want to have a look at this property. Now, they haven't bought it at this stage, but at least you've got them in through the gate and in through the front door. And
real estate agents know this. That's why when you sign up one to sell your house, they start to talk to you about presentation almost as soon as it's, you finish signing the deal. You can get all that assistance to help you make your house look the best it can be. And it's all for me about making the buyer, when they walk into a potential buyer, imagine that they can be in that house. They start to picture their life, how they can have their nice unit there and their nice couch there, and imagine themselves living in there, and that's what builds that emotional attachment.
That's right, Rob, but as Tim said, I absolutely agree. You need to get them in the front door in the first instance. That presentation is critical, it's a key. And for agents to actually sell, what have they got these days? They've got the internet, they have brochures. It's the first port of call for anyone that's actually looking at selling.
And I think one of the issues when people are selecting an agent, and there are so many important things in getting the right agent, but one of them is the sort of advice they'll give you in terms of presentation. Now, you might have a very run-down old Victorian property that's sort of leaning to one side, and the question you're asking yourself is, do I repaint? Do I add a room? What do I do to it? Now, quite often with those sort of properties, it's best to smarten up the outside and make it presentable so you're not having to you push the cobwebs away to get inside. But don't do much to it.
Well, that's why you end up seeing that marketing about, renovators delight, because the agent's gone, they've picked the market, that particular property, and gone, there's no point rebuilding it to sell it for the land, get them in the front door.
And the funny thing is some people over the years have paid more for an old derelict place that's got heaps and heaps of potential as against something that's identical, that's been added to or been tarted up, for want of another word, and they've spent money unwisely.
And tarted up with someone else's taste as well.
That's right. And ultimately they're going to push all that away anyhow. They're going to start again. So it's best that people see something that's really honest and not something that's been played with. And people can see through that. They can see that it's been, done up for sale, as distinct from another type of property that you may hire furniture and present it.
In its best light, but also too, it's really important not to have too many things in the home, because you need to neutralise the home so that when the potential purchasers are coming through, they can imagine themselves living there.
The old decluttering word. It's pretty hard to do, but ultimately if you're going to move anyway, you have to remove things from the house, so you may as well start by taking out all the excess bits and pieces so that people can imagine their life in there.
But does that mean depersonalise? Because there is a difference, isn't there?
There's a very important point here. What some people do is they actually make a place look very clinical. And that's the worst thing you can do. You've got to make it look like it's their home. They're buying from the heart, not the hip pocket. Ultimately, the hip pocket is the one that's affected, but it's the heart that drives this.
It's funny, I remember one of the houses we bought early on, we walked into the house, the whole family was there, which was a bit unusual because normally everyone's out for an open, but they were trying to sell a property. Everyone was there.
Big mistake. Well, big mistake. If you're a seller, leave the property to the agent. Huge mistake.
Yeah. They were there because we popped over, so the agent was wanting to sell this property and it had been passed in a few weeks beforehand. But what got us was we walked in and everyone looked happy, but there was a bit of furniture that sat in that house. And so we had this memory in our mind of a table with a long bench in it, and that's what almost sold us on the property, because it had this lovely warm and inviting atmosphere because of the table, which was never going to be there when we bought the property, of course.
So you felt the lifestyle.
Exactly.
Because I actually think that every property has a personality and they attract a certain type of person to buy it. So when choosing the agent, I agree with Tim, you really need to knuckle down, how do I present the property in its best light? Also too, who's going to buy the property?
And Tim, if you had to give someone a tip, what would your wow factor tip be?
I think if it's a new or an established property, I would start from the front gate and do this yourself if you're selling. Stand out in the street and look at the property and say, would I buy this today if I was a buyer, not a seller? So do a role reversal in all of this. Then as you move forward towards the front door, have a look around the door to see whether there are not cobwebs around, whether you should paint the door, whether you should clean up the entrance. It's terribly important to get people through the front door, and this is what a lot of people don't appreciate. They'll do lots of work inside, but they ignore the outside, and the first impressions are the ones that count.
Sellers really do have to go that extra mile to make their home stand out from all the other ones that they're seeing on a weekend.
Yes.
They do. They're really in partnership with their appointed selling agent, I think. And at the end of the day, when they're making decisions on what to accept, if the property passes in at auction or how to actually set their reserve price, they need to look at a checkbox. If I was a vendor, have I done my part? If my husband smokes, have I banned him from smoking? Had the dogs gone on a little doggy holiday? You don't want to walk through a property that doesn't feel nice, doesn't smell nice.
And I think this business of brewing coffee and cooking scones, I think that's a bit passé.
People can see it.
People can see through that.
Yeah.
And you don't want to make it look and appear to be an artificial sort of environment. It's got to be one that's a genuine one.
If it's a marriage breakup, another tip for people that are selling, they really should have his and her clothes still in the master bedroom, because people, when they're looking through the wardrobes, if they only see ladies' clothes or men's clothes, they think, well, we can actually negotiate a bargain here because this property does have to sell.
That's a good point, actually. And that's a thing I think agents have got to give people advice on. And it gets down to actually, and you might say, well, what right have they got looking in cupboards?
But they do.
But the fact is they do, and they're not necessarily looking to see what you're wearing, but they're looking to see whether they're properly fitted and that sort of thing.
That's right, for the space.
Yeah, and in so doing, they'll come to a conclusion about why they're selling.
Sticky beaking. People do like to look at property when they go around, and I mean these days, of course, your property is so presentable when you go to sell. Of course, it used to be 2 or 3 photos on the signboard, and that was it. But now, of course, with 3D video rolls inside the house, the internet, physical presentation of it. I mean, your house is on show 24 hours a day when you're trying to sell it.
Thanks very much, everyone. That's all we've got time for this week.